Okay, hi, we are live. Thank you for joining us. We are at the webinar, The Picky Parrot, Teach Your Pet Bird to Eat a Healthy Diet with Dr. Stephanie Lamb. Welcome, Dr. Lamb.
Thanks.
Once again, we get to have an awesome webinar presentation from you. So, and I mean, this topic on picky eating is, I think it's something that really resonates with a lot of pet bird stewards. It's probably, I would say almost, wouldn't you say like a top 3 at least as far as concerns go?
Yeah. For sure.
Maybe even number 1, but across the board with all parrot species, it just seems like a biggie.
Yeah, so many different species can be quite picky. They're really good at teaching us what they want, and we're really good at, I guess, listening to them, but sometimes it's not always the most nutritious thing, you know. So we got to have some tricks up our sleeve to get them to be less picky and eat a more balanced diet.
That's true. Although, you know, Arroyo behind you, from what I know of Amazons, they're not as picky. I mean, maybe they're more picky for like, we want what you're eating,
yeah.
not what you're given. So.
He's not too picky. I haven't had too many problems with getting him to try new things. Sometimes he's a little phobic of things at first, because sometimes, you know, just seeing a new thing may be a little bit scary initially, and he has to look at it for a little bit of time. But then once it's in his mouth, then he's trying it just fine.
Okay. That's we'll have to break this down by species too, because there might be some trends there with you know, Amazons versus like a cockatiel or a gray or something.
Yeah.
So let's see. So if you're just joining us, you're with we're doing the webinar on the Picky Parrot, Teach Your Pet Bird to Eat a Healthy Diet. And just want to remind everybody, of course, you probably know it by now, but if you have a question for Dr. Lamb, which we'll hopefully get to towards after the presentation, to use the Q&A button and not the chat feature, so we can capture your question and have it answered. And this is going to be exciting. So you have a presentation lined up for us, and do you want to dive right in there? Do you have any intros or anything like that?
Sure. Yeah, we can go ahead and get started. I'm going to go ahead. I do have a PowerPoint that I'm going to share with you guys. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and we'll get that going.
Okay, great.
All right, so today's webinar is all about feeding picky birds and trying to get them to eat different things that are a little healthier for them, hopefully. So, you know, there's many different tricks and things that we can try. Certain things may work better for one species of bird over another, but the big thing that I first wanted to go over that I think is really important, that plays a huge role in getting birds to eat an appropriate diet and try different things, is to make sure we are not overfeeding them. So I'm going to go over, and we've talked about this in some previous webinars, but I think it's a good thing to go over again, because I feel like I can't stress it enough. If we overfeed our birds, and if we have too many things for them, calorie wise or option wise, then it's really easy for them to be picky. It's like going to the buffet every day. You know, when we go to buffets, we tend to pick out the things that are really delicious, what we're really going to enjoy. And maybe we aren't always good about picking out those things that are the healthiest options for us. And so, you know, sometimes we're doing that in our homes for our birds every single day. So to start off with, the very first step that I think we really need to drill home to everybody is feed only the volume of food that a bird needs in a day. If we feed more volume of food than they need, more calories than they need, they have every reason to be picky and only pick out what they want. So on my little chart here, I have some generalizations for different species. And I have a little disclaimer off to the side. It just says that these are approximations. They are based on adult, non-breeding, appropriate weight, healthy birds. So if we look at a budgerigar to start off with, most of our budgies are somewhere around 30 grams. You might have some that are a little more than that, a little less than that, but taking an average of around 30 grams. There are certain calculations that we as veterinarians will do that allow us to know how many calories of food do they need in a day. And so let's think about our average adult healthy budgie. That's 30 grams. When we do its calculations, it only needs 11 calories a day. And if you think about that, for humans, we also vary too, right? Based on age and growth, individuals. But they generally say 2,000 calorie a day diet, right? And we know certainly that some individuals need less than that, some individuals need more than that. It's all based on, your health, your activity status, how old you are, all sorts of things. There's many things that go into these calculations. So same thing exists for these little guys, but these are generalizations for healthy individuals. So whereas we need these roughly 2,000 calories a day, a little budgie only needs 11 calories a day. I mean, that's a huge difference, right? And so when you actually look at foods that are meeting this caloric need, it's a really small amount of food. And owners, and myself included, sometimes feed a little bit more than what we are supposed to, because we kind of put our own thoughts and emotions into things and say, oh my gosh, that seems like such a small amount of food to feed. I really feel bad. I don't want them to starve. I want to give them more. And a lot of times we do. And if we do, then, it's not so bad if it's just a day here or there. But if we do it all the time, then it allows for them to start to become picky and say, well, hey, I know I've got all these different food options available to me. So I'm going to pick out the things that I really like. And I'm going to ignore those things that maybe aren't as delicious to me. So as we go down the chart, I put the green cheek conures, cockatiels, African greys, Amazons, cockatoos, macaws. Again, these are just generalizations for some of the most common species that people have as pets, and they're common weights, but they can vary. So like, for example, I have the African gray being 400 grams, but I see some African greys that are healthy and are 500 grams. So it's something that there is variability. You need to know your individual bird's weight. You need to know your individual bird's health status, reproductive status, to know if, to then calculate the appropriate calories that are needed. So I'm going to go over an example. And the last time we had talked about this before, I had gone over a cockatoo example. So I'm going to go over a different species this time. So if anybody has, an umbrella cockatoo and they want to go back to see previous webinars, they have that. But we're going to go over an African gray this time, because there's a lot of African gray owners out there. So we're going to take an example. This is actually one of my African grays. We're going to use her as our example patient. This is Maureen. She weighs about 405 grams. She lives indoors. Her wings aren't clipped, but she just doesn't really fly. It's just not something that she does for whatever reason. She's got moderate activity. She'll walk around, she'll climb her cage, she plays with her toys, but she's not a really high activity bird. She's a little bit more of a sedentary individual. She is 30 years old, so she's just kind of like, she's set in her ways. She isn't too crazy like Arroyo, who does a lot of acrobatics and is all over the place. So when I look at her and her weight and knowing all her health status and everything, I'm able to do a calculation. And again, this is something your veterinarian can do for you, can do a calculation to determine what her calorie content is per day, and what she requires to maintain a normal, healthy body weight, and meet that caloric need. And so when I do her calculations, she comes to about 80 grams. So there's a lot of African grays out there that are right around this weight that probably are going to fit into a very similar caloric need. And when I looked at her pellets that she eats, the calorie content of her pellets is 3,200 calories per kilogram of food. So that sounds like a lot, but it's a per kilogram, which, a kilogram is a good size of food. And we're certainly not feeding her a kilogram of food a day. So, and I'm not also just feeding her pellets. Pellets are just part of her diet. I do like to feed a variety of other things as well. And for her, as we've talked about in previous webinars, what is good as far as ratios of pellets and that sort of thing. And there's differing suggestions, but generally we recommend that birds be eating somewhere between like 60 to 80% of their diet as pellets. It does vary for different species, but somewhere around 60 to 80% of the diet should be pellets for most, not all, of our parrots. So that means about 30% of the rest of her diet. I chose her as 70% of her diet as pellets. That means the remaining 30% of her diet is going to be other healthy food options. So if we know that she's getting 80 calories a day, well, 70% of 80 calories means 56 calories is going to be what is coming from her pellets. And if we are knowing that she's getting 30% of her calories from other food items, well, if she's getting 80 calories, times that by 30%, 24 calories are coming from other items. So I've now decided how much of her food is going to be coming calorie-wise from pellets versus how much is going to be coming from other stuff. Because I know the calorie content of the pellets, and that is something that you can easily find on labeling of pellets. I can do further calculations to know that if I'm getting 54 calories from my pellets, when I do calculations, that means she's ultimately getting 16.9 grams of pellets. So we can just round that up to 17 just for easy math. Then if I know that she's getting 17 grams of pellets, I weigh that out on a little gram scale. And what that ultimately equates to for the brand of pellet that she is on is about 2 tablespoons of pellets a day. Which, when you think about it, really, it's not a huge volume of pellets. And when you put that inside of a food dish, a lot of the food dishes that we have for parrots are really kind of large. And so it's kind of human tendency for us to fill these food dishes up because we want to have them have easy access to their food all the time. But they don't need to have this food dish that's really rather large filled up a lot. 2 pellets for an African gray inside of this size of a bowl, which is a pretty standard parrot size bowl, really is just going to be not even a full single layer on the bottom of this bowl. So it's really good to get measuring spoons. Once you know how many, what the volume is that you need to be feeding your bird, get little measuring spoons, teaspoons, tablespoon measurements, so that you can actually measure out on a daily basis how much of their diet is coming from pellets or other food options. So now, I know how many pellets I'm going to be giving her on a daily basis, but I did my equation so that I could be giving her other things as well, because we like to have other variety in the diet for these guys. And I know that about 24 calories can come from other food items. So I just listed here an example of foods that I could choose from. Now, granted, there is a huge list, much longer than this, that I could have come up with for you guys, but for the sake of not having such a long list for our viewers here and making the print be really, really tiny, I just chose a few options here, but things that we can choose from, green beans, corn, other types of beans, carrots, bell peppers, some blueberries, grapes, there's a variety of things that can be very healthy for us to have as options for our birds. And I put some just general caloric content for these items and per volume of food. So let's say we want to give our bird some bell peppers. Well, there's only 3 calories in a tablespoon of bell peppers. So it's not a huge amount of calories for that food item. So I know that if I'm going to be feeding 24 calories from all these other food items, I can kind of pick and choose different things of what I want to give. So I gave an example of what I could potentially feed this individual bird to meet the caloric needs on a weekly basis. I want to have a little bit of variety because everybody likes variety, right? We don't all like to always eat the exact same thing all the time, and I think our birds enjoy having a little bit of variety too. So examples of what I could do for this particular individual, we're going to have that base of 2 tablespoons of pellets per day. But then maybe day 1, I'm going to be doing a combination of pinto beans, a carrot, bell peppers, grape. The next day we're going to get some soybeans, blueberries, and the list just goes on and on there. And you can see we have a variety of different options, but all those different food items that we're offering end up equating to that last portion of the caloric content that she needs. So I know I'm not overdoing it. And when you look at this actually inside of a food dish for a parrot, it actually really makes sense. If we watch what they eat throughout the day, parrots do like to throw things, but we can actually use that to our advantage as well for certain species. So sometimes they'll throw things down, but then if you actually watch how much they consume in a day, really this volume of food plus these additional options for them to choose from really kind of fits quite nicely for what they need. If I were to overdo it by a couple of calories a day, it's not the end of the world. And you can see if you look at my calculations, there's a couple of days where maybe it's over by 1 calorie. No big deal. But it isn't something we would want to routinely do, because if we did, then that's when we start to allow them to have options, because, okay, she has her pellets and she has all these delicious things to choose from. But certainly she's probably has some favorites in there that she can choose from. And we don't want her to unbalance her diet by selecting more of those things that are more delicious and maybe not as balanced, I would say. When we look at the diet as a whole, we want it to be overall, really well balanced. But certainly some things in the mix here may be a little higher in sugar or a little higher in fat, and we don't want her to choose those particular items too much and then result in some nutritional imbalance issues happening. So, this is just an example of one individual, but I think it's really, really, really important to know how much to feed your bird on a daily basis, because if you feed them the amount that they need, then you have a lot more control and a lot less ability for a bird to be picky. I can't stress that enough. I think that is the number one most important thing. Don't overfeed them. If you overfeed them, they absolutely have every reason to be picky. So, rule number one. But now that we've talked about rule number one, now we're going to get into the sort of less scientific side of this, and maybe the little bit more fun side of things. Okay, so we want our birds to also kind of have fun while they're eating, because if they're enjoying what they're doing, they're engaged with their environment, then they are more likely to pick up different things, investigate different things, tear stuff apart, and in that act of tearing things apart, get a little bit of something new to try. So, have fun with it. A lot of birds do really like to search for their food. If they were in the wild, that is what they would be doing. They would be, having to spend their day, and it varies from one species to the next, but generally speaking, somewhere between like 60 to 70% of birds' waking hours in the wild are spent foraging and looking for food items. And so it's an innate behavior that they like to do. And so if we can kind of harness that innate behavior and have them look through fun things to find their food at home, one, it helps us to get them to investigate new things and maybe be a little less picky. But two, it also helps them with the whole foraging topic, which we have discussed before, which helps them to really be engaged with their environment, use their minds, because we know they are so smart, and helps to reduce certain behavioral issues that we could see if they're kind of sitting around and being just bored all the time with easy access to their food. So I just have a couple of pictures up here of options that you could try. So here's a picture of a royal. I have this little bucket, and I'll sometimes just drop things in the bucket, and he loves to go in there and look at things. And I've had multiple bird owners tell me, and some of my other birds at home that really like to look into little buckets and explore through things. And you can put more than just little food items in there. You can put little toys that they can go in and grab and throw things out. Sometimes just the act of having something for them to throw all over the place is really fun for them. But then as they're throwing things around and they find, oh, what is this weird little thing at the bottom here? Oh, is it some delicious, fun little treat? I think I'm going to chew. Oh, wow, this actually tastes really interesting. So you're harnessing that natural behavior that they have for wanting to forage and pick through things and destroy stuff, because we know birds can be rather destructive, right? So we're harnessing that natural behavior that they would be doing in the wild and rewarding them when they find something new, and then getting them to try out new things. And I have a picture of a macaw here with a box that was a box that was going to be thrown out, after it was used, but we turned it into something to tear apart. A lot of larger birds do like to tear through boxes. Now, what's nice about this particular box, it's not too large for the bird to get in and feel hormonal with, but just the right size for, ooh, this is something that's fun to destroy and pull apart. But if there's something new inside to investigate, well, now we've added that exciting thing to this where we get to investigate another food item, and when they're used to foraging and having to look for their food, they do tend to pick up new things a little bit more, because they're used to like having to check through things and find stuff and go, oh, what is this weird little thing that I've never seen before? And then they may be a little bit more apt to take it if they are used to foraging behavior. So just, trying to harness that innate behavior that they have of wanting to forage can get them to try new things. Another picture up there that I have at the top is just showing a toy that really is not meant to be a foraging toy. It's just a fun little cardboard sort of riveted thing, and we put some pellets and stuff in there for them to find. So it's it makes the toy even more exciting. This toy was fun to begin with because it was great for destroying, but now we've also turned it into something where you're going to get a reward from it. So another thing to kind of help our picky eaters to be more apt to try new things is make it a flock event. Birds are flock animals. All of our pet birds really at their core are social animals. And though we may have some who may be a little bit shy and some who are a little bit more elaborate and really are social butterflies, there is variability in behaviors from one to the next. Really at the core, all of them are social animals. And they learn what to eat based on the other individuals that are around them. And so if you have more than one bird at home, use the bird who is a little bit more adventurous with eating as the bird to teach the others what to eat. When you have a bird who is really not shy, like Arroyo, he's not shy about eating a variety of different things. If I give something to him that none of the birds have ever tried before, and he gets really excited and he's flashing his eyes and like, oh my gosh, this is the greatest thing, it kind of incites a little bit of jealousy in everybody else. And I can use that jealousy to my advantage for anybody else who is a little bit more suspicious of food items or picky about things, because, well, he just got a treat. Why can't I get a treat? So, if you have a bird who is really good about trying different things, offer them new items, have them show the other birds how to try something more adventurous. If you have a bird that is maybe a little bit more shy around other birds, or say you have a single bird home, you can pretend like you're eating the food item, or if it is something that you want to eat, you could eat it yourself. If you have a food item that you want your bird to try, and you act like it's the greatest thing in the world. If you like, have your eyes get really wide, and because we know that birds can flash their pupils, since they have different muscle in their eyes than we can. When they're really excited, you will see them flash that pupil where it gets big and small, big and small, big and small. So what we can kind of do to try to do a similar thing is like just open your eyes wide and then like narrow and just kind of back and forth, like, oh my God. So it's kind of trying to be like what they do when they're really excited. But when they see you do that, they're like, ooh, they're really excited about whatever it is that they have, and like interact with your food and pick at it and like break it apart and just play with your food or whatever the food item is that you want the bird to eat. If you're really enjoying it, then a lot of times they'll go, oh, okay, well, that looks really interesting. They seem like they really like that. Can I have that? And so, and it may sound mean, but sometimes a little bit of like teasing, if you're like, oh, this is delicious. Oh, do you want it? No, I want this. This is mine, and acting like this is the most coveted, wonderful thing in the world. That can sometimes really pique their interest to get them trying something new. And then the other thing I wanted to say about this, for some of the small species, I have definitely used the other birds who are good about eating things to teach the small species how to pick up new food items and things that we want them to eat. It works really well for like budgies, lovebirds, cockatiels. The tiny guys just seem to really be quite reliant on their flock members to tell them what's appropriate to eat and what they should maybe stay away from. And when birds see that somebody else is eating something and they're not dying from it, then they go, oh, okay, maybe I'll try that out too. So it's really helpful to use those really non-picky eaters to your advantage and have them teach the picky ones how different things can be delicious. The other thing is timing it out well. Birds do usually have particular times in the day when they are a little bit more excited to eat. And usually first thing in the morning, most species of parrots are wanting to be eating. I mean, just like a lot of people, some people are morning people that don't like to eat breakfast, but there's a lot of people that they wake up in the morning and they're like, man, I'm hungry and it is time to eat. And that's the first thing that they want to do. Parrots, that is how they are. They are ready to eat pretty much as that sun comes up. And so use that to your advantage. Because they like to eat in the morning time, that's when you want to offer those new food items that they haven't had before. Because they're going to be a little bit hungrier, so they're going to be a little bit more likely to try it out and see if it is delicious or not. And you don't have to starve your bird. None of us, ever want anybody to starve their bird and keep away food items from their birds in an effort to make them eat a very specific thing. But if, say, you're trying to get your bird to eat pellets and they're normally really a seed junkie, in the morning time, don't feed them their seeds. Put those pellets out for them, or fresh food items, what have you, that are a little healthier. Set those things out for them in the morning hours and wait. You can wait till, midday. And most birds, if they are sitting with a food item from the time the sun is up until several hours, like maybe afternoonish time, most birds are gonna pick through that food because, I'm really hungry and I want to eat something. And so maybe I will try this stuff out. So having those new foods available first thing in the morning can be really helpful. Now, if you have a bird who, is really picky, this is something that don't hold out forever. You do need to offer them the food that they will be better about eating, because we don't want anybody to starve themselves. Again, like I said, if you have a bird that is super picky, you may need to do this for a few days for them to start recognizing, like, okay, this is how it's going to be. They're going to give me this particular food every, morning time. But do give them the other food items in the evening time if they are not picking up on that new food. If they're picking up on that new food, great. let them go for it. Let them eat that food. You don't have to offer the other food item that you may want to be transitioning them off of. But if they're really truly picky and they're not picking up on it, then, you know, afternoon time, okay, go ahead. Here is your other food items that you're better about taking. We're going to try a different route. And that's something I should have mentioned earlier too, is that these different things that I'm recommending, the reason there's lots of different recommendations is because one thing doesn't work for all birds. So, you know, you need to keep that in mind, that if you tried one way with a food item, just because you tried one way with a food item and a bird didn't want to transition their diet or pick up on that new thing, doesn't mean you stop trying. It means that you try a different way, because that particular way that you tried it may just not have worked well for that individual. And you just need to figure out what does work for them.
Yeah. So Dr. Lamb, just going off of a carrot example. Oh, so you've got, yeah. So going off like a carrot, you could wedge it to the cage bars. You could slice it, dice it, mush it, right? And see what works for them.
Yeah, exactly. So there's lots of different ways to present things. And with this next slide here, it's kind of a good segue into it, because what I was going to talk about is, you know, trick them into trying different things a little bit, where chop things up. So like I have pictures here of all these different birds eating some fresh food items. And I've had several people tell me, well, like, my bird doesn't really eat greens. What are you talking about giving my bird lettuces or cilantros? Like, that just seems weird. My bird's never going to touch that. Why would they touch those items? And what you can do is chop those things up into small pieces and mix it with other delicious foods. And so you can see, like in this photo up here of Arroyo, I have some greens that are chopped up, but then I've got all these other little things sort of mixed in with it, to have him start picking at those things, but then also eating those greens. Now, Arroyo doesn't have any problem eating greens. He'll eat it just fine. But for those birds who are picky about eating greens, that is a great way to introduce them to greens. And the degree of chopping that I have that stuff diced to in the photos there, you can do it a whole lot smaller than that, to where it's little teeny tiny pieces of greens that then get stuck to some other food item that they really like. You can see this little parrotlet down here in the bowl. She's got some greens, and then she has this delicious berry, and it's all over her beak. And so if we really want her to maybe be taking those greens more, we could chop them up into really fine, tiny little pieces and stick them to that berry, so that as she's eating through that berry, she's hopefully going to be getting some of those greens as well, and taking them up that way. So, you know, mix it with something that you know that the bird likes. You know, if you know your bird really likes banana, for example, and you want your bird to be eating some like beans or something, though it may sound a little weird as a combination, you could stick some beans like kind of through a banana, you know, so through like little pieces of a banana, so that they have to like get some of that delicious banana, but they also get a little bit of that bean with it or something like that. You know, it's obviously there's tons of different things that you could try with all the different foods that are out there. But presenting it in different forms too is really good. You can chop it up into small pieces, yes, but cooking things, some birds don't like their food raw, and cooking it sometimes can be a great way to soften things up, to get them to be a little bit more interested in taking it. And sometimes that's what you have to do, is sometimes you have to start with one particular form. Like, say we have a carrot. We want our bird to be eating carrots. The bird never likes carrots, but carrots are a fabulous source of vitamin A. We want them to be eating this, but they don't like raw carrots. Well, maybe try steaming it. You know, if you steam it, that softens it up, which might be, the texture might be a little bit more appealing to them. And then as they're kind of used to that, then maybe later on down the road, you don't steam some carrots. And now they're used to eating those steamed carrots. They're used to what the shape of the carrot is, the color, the texture. And now you've given them the carrot just not steamed. So the texture is a little different, but not different enough to make them not try it. You know, so they might then be more apt to taking something that's raw if you didn't want it to be cooked. And the other thing is with some of the greens, providing them as a dried product some birds will take really well to. And I will say that I've had a lot of success with small species taking really well to the dried products, because a lot of the small species will be hopping around on the ground and are ground foragers. So like our budgies, our cockatiels, these birds are from very dry environments, and they eat little grains and things in like grassland areas. And so not only are they eating those little grains, but they're also getting little pieces of like dried leaves and grasses and things like that as well, right? And so that's what they would be naturally eating in the wild. So sometimes presenting them with dried sort of greens can be a great way to get them to take greens in that form. And there are, products that people make out there that are like dried herbs and stuff. They're really, really great things to offer. And you can sometimes take those things too and like make them as like sprinkled on some of those moist foods, so they stick to them. So again, now they're trying a little bit more variety because they have this smaller chopped up dried thing stuck to some other item that they're more likely to take. And I did have an example here because I actually had a little bit of fresh stuff for Arroyo today. And this is just an example of one thing that I did at home. And again, there's some pictures there for us. Let me stop sharing for just a moment, just so I can kind of show you here. Oh look, and he's already coming over for it. This is a little bit of a chopped food. So I have actually some sprouted lentils, which is another fun thing to do. So, there's all these different beans and seeds and stuff that you can learn how to sprout. And you're presenting them with the same food item, but in like a different form, right? Because when foods are sprouted, it actually changes the nutritional content a little bit. This is a growing organism, right? And so when we sprout them and cause them to go through this germination phase, we're actually changing that nutritional content a bit, which provides them with different nutrients. So same food item, but it's not the dried form. Now I'm doing something that is moist. But you can see I've got some lentils, and there's like a little bit of squash, and we've got a little bit of millet seed that's sort of stuck to that squash. And so if I want him to eat the squash, because he actually isn't super excited about this particular type of squash that I have. This is table squash, and I don't know, it's just not his favorite thing. But because there's a little bit of millet seed stuck on there, ooh, that's delicious. And so he'll be like picking at that. And then I also have a little bit of a green stuck in here. And
he's trying to get over there.
Yeah, he climbed down because he wants to get it. So I could put it into a foraging item for him to have him start working and looking for it. I could put it in his bowl. I think I'll do a little bit of both, but you'll see he's going to go back really quickly to this area here. So I'm going to put it in different areas so that he has to, again, work for it. We're making him exhibit some of those normal parrot behaviors. So he's got his food dish that has a tiny bit in there to get him stimulated, but then he's got all his foraging options too. So he's getting more variety in his diet, and it's exciting for him. He loves it, and I'm hopefully providing him with a very nutritional component to his diet as well. So okay, let me go ahead and share my screen again. Okay. So I have just a few more slides, and then we can start taking questions to answer any specifics that people have. Okay. Oh, actually, one more slide. So the other thing that I just wanted to say is, think outside the box. There's lots of different ways we can get birds to eat other options and things that are healthier for them. And so here's an example of Arroyo eating some cilantro. And this cilantro was cilantro that I had grown in my garden. And I picked the whole plant itself and I stuck it on his cage or on his tree stand. I have stuck it on his cage before, but I stuck it on his tree stand. And so he's now has a toy for him. So it's this fun thing for him to tear apart, because again, he's a parrot and parrots love to destroy things. And so he's got the stalks of this plant that he now has a fun time tearing apart. But as he works his way up, he's got the leaves of the cilantro. And if he goes all the way to the end there, he's also got these little seeds of the cilantro as well. And so he has this food that's presented to him in various forms, but as sort of a toy. And for like the little guys, the again, those like the budgies, the cockatiels, some of our smaller species, sometimes when you hang food items in the cage, they become more interested in it. So just, think of different ways that you can present that food to them. Again, I could have hung this in the cage, but I just shoved it inside of his tree stand. So I put it in an area where it's a fun play place. And you can do that with, your birds, put food in the areas where they like to play and have things to interact with. And at first make it more of just something that is a toy for them, or something that is not really initially thought of as a food item, but then they start, after they interact with it and like bite into things, they start to recognize, oh, this is a food item. I can chew this up. I can swallow it. This is healthy. A lot of people will get their little guys to eat greens by misting the greens. So the greens have like little water droplets on them, and then hanging them in the cage, because a lot of birds actually do like to like kind of bathe up against leaves. So like if you have like a nice like romaine lettuce leaf or something and you spritz it down and there's all these little like droplets of water, you'll have little birds that kind of go up to that and like try to rub themselves on it and get themselves a nice little bath. They'll bathe in those sort of things, but then they'll kind of grab the leaf at the same time and take a chunk out of it, just because, again, birds are destructive and they tear things apart. And so they'll grab things and then they go, wait a second, that was delicious. Hold on a second, I'm gonna eat some more of that. And so you can really trick them into trying something different and something that maybe if you just put it into the food dish, they'd be like, boring, I don't want that. But if you hang it in a weird way, display it differently, then they may be more apt to think it's a toy initially, and oh wait, actually it's something fabulous. So the possibilities of what we can do for these guys to get them to try different things, there's so many different tricks that are out there, but I'm gonna go back to the beginning in that I really think it's important that people feed the amount that they need per day, because so many times I will have owners come in and, we'll be talking about healthy food options, and, people will say, well, they're only eating sunflower seeds. They're only eating maybe 2 or 3 different types of seeds. And I'll ask, have you tried, other food items? Have you tried pellets? Have you tried, different fresh food options? And they say, no, my bird's really not interested in any of that. And then I ask, well, how much do you feed them? And they oftentimes will say, I fill up the bowl. And I really think that that's a big reason why a lot of people have problems transitioning their birds, is because we feed too much. And that just gives them the ability to pick out what they want and not balance themselves as well as they should. And I will also say the other thing, and I am totally guilty of this myself as a bird owner, is we're afraid, as bird owners sometimes, to get our birds transitioned onto healthier diets. One of my own birds, it took me 7 months to transition him off of a seed-based diet to a healthier pellet diet with a little bit of seed and fresh items. And ultimately, in the end, when he actually transitioned, I think it was me. That was the big problem in getting him to eat new foods, because I was just so nervous. I would try a little bit of pellets, and anytime he would just like look at me wrong, I'd be like, oh gosh, he's gonna die. And I would give him the seeds, and since after my experience with him, I really haven't had a hard time transitioning birds, because I just now feed them the amount that they need, and we just slowly work it in there. A lot of times I'll have people with give that amount of food that they need per day, but when they're doing the transition, feed 50% the old diet and 50% the new diet, and just mix the old and new diet together at that 50-50 ratio to start off with, and only feed the amount they need per day. And a lot of birds will, in the morning time, eat the diet that they're used to. And then they're still hungry later in the day, and they only got 50% of their calories with the morning option. So as the day goes on, they're just left with those other options that we want them to transition to. And they start to pick up on it because they recognize they're hungry. They, after, a day or two, recognize that that pellet isn't going to kill them, or whatever food item it is safe. And they start picking up on it. But I don't think I can say it enough that feed only the amount they need per day. Now, granted, if you look at this photo of Arroyo here, that's a big cilantro, and he is getting an exuberant amount of it. But I am using it partially for playing, and also cilantro is something that he's not going to get a ton of calories from. So he's going to get very little calories from that, and he has plenty of other food options that he's eating throughout the day. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen again. All right. Now I'm ready to take any questions that you guys have.
Okay. So Dr. Lamb, my question for you, it's one that I used to get when I worked at Bird Talk, was, so when dogs and cats eat, they eat like kibble. It's physically gone from the bowl. Like when they eat it's not in the bowl anymore. With birds and pellets, there's a crumble. It's, the fine dust, the crumble. So the question oftentimes would be like, did they eat it? Do they need to go and, they don't go back and eat all the crumbs or suck up the dust. It's just like they leave a pile of the eaten pellets in the bowl. Is that considered eating the pellets?
A lot of them will go back, and thank you for bringing that up, actually, because there was something I wanted to touch on that I forgot about, and that reminded me. So birds do drop a lot of their food items, right? And I think it's perfectly acceptable for them to go down and get their food, especially those ground foragers, especially the species that are ground foragers. For example, African greys are ground foraging birds. They really do like to get down on the ground, and they like to eat different things. So they will, my two African greys that I have at home, I don't keep the grates on the bottom of their cages, and they'll drop stuff. And then later on in the day, when they want more and the food dish is empty, they go down to the bottom of their cage and they start picking through what they can find that is still good for them to eat. So, yes, there's going to be some stuff that they're not consuming. There's going to be portions of those pellets that maybe, again, turned into dust. But it's a small component of it. And allowing them access to go and get that, I think, is, for the most part, okay. Now, you have to really be cleaning your cage quite frequently. It's not something, if you're only able to clean your cage once a week, probably not the best thing to do, because the feces also fall on the floor, right? So you do have to change the papers on the bottom of the cage on a daily basis, or at least every other day, if you are going to be allowing them access to the bottom of the cage to get to their food. If you can't do it like that if you're only cleaning the cage on a weekly basis. So, because then you could potentially run into them having their food have poop on it, and then them eating their poop, which is not what we want them to do, because then we can have some bacterial problems and things like that we then would have them coming into the office for veterinary visits, and we want to keep our birds healthy. So I think it's fine for them to forage on the ground for the food that they dropped, but just keep it clean.
Okay. And then, so the other was, if you have, say, two birds sharing a cage, do you recommend they have separate feeding stations? Like, how would you know who's eating what? Or would you recommend having them eat outside the cage, or? Yeah,
so usually a couple feeding stations. So like, I have one flight cage where I have a few species in that cage, and I have their amount that they need per day, but I have it in different stations. So that way they can go to those different stations. Now you have to also just make sure that nobody's overeating or undereating, nobody's being bullied. If you do have a bully, then it might be best to separate for feeding times. And that's okay. You can certainly do that for like the more sort of base diet, but then the like fresh stuff that you might have throughout the cage, maybe that's what they then are able to forage around together for, So, okay. But if you do foraging as well, and you have multiple foraging stations, and toys for them to chew on, then one bird may be working over at one area for a foraging thing, and another bird may be working over at another spot, so there's a couple of ways I guess you can get around that.
Okay, so we have a question from Frank. They ask, are sprouts a truly healthy diet, or are they occasional variation from a pellet diet?
I would say they're a part of a healthy diet. I wouldn't, and when you are doing fresh items, you never, with anything really, you don't want to have just one food item be the sole source of nutrition, because there just really isn't one fresh food item that is like the ultimate packet of nutrition, right? That's what we have our pellets trying to be, our pellets, the nutriberries, aptakes, those sort of things. Those are, trying to be sort of all the nutrients that they need, the appropriate balance of proteins, vitamins, minerals, carbohydrates, fats, all that stuff into that packaged component. But if you're feeding fresh items, you have to have variety. And so sprouts are a great thing, but they should never be the sole thing that the bird is eating. And when you're doing sprouts too, if you like to sprout food, which again, it's fun. So I would encourage people to do it, but you have to do it right, because sprouts can go bad, and any fresh food item can go bad, but this process of sprouting is a very specific way to do it. I mean, there's a few ways, but there are very specific ways you should do it so that you are not having growth of pathogens like bacteria or fungus, because those sort of things can happen. You certainly don't want to feed that to your birds. So you have to follow appropriate sprouting techniques.
Okay, and then Sue has two rehomed cockatiels that are used to eating the cheap seed. She says that she's introduced them to romaine lettuce and Cheerios and grape nuts in addition to their other food, which they like. They don't eat pellets or dry food. Any suggestions to get them to eat less seed? Millet is like crack cocaine to them. So,
okay. So let me, I think I had the cockatiel example on that first slide. I could screen share again, or I could just tell you too. Yeah. So cockatiels, average size cockatiel, and cockatiels do vary. So I don't know exactly how big her cockatiels are, male, female, reproductive status, all that stuff. But generally speaking, I'm going to say that most cockatiels need between like 25 to 30 calories in a day. If we were looking at that on like purely a pellet diet basis, that's probably only going to be somewhere around like 2 teaspoons of pellets a day, and that's going to be per bird. So I would, with the junk seed diet that she has, what I would advise, and this is a conversation we have quite frequently, is you have your old diet and you have whatever your new diet is. Mix them together 50-50. If you want to be doing 50% pellets, 50% seed, that's fine. But only feed that amount that you need per day of that mix. So again, average cockatiel, somewhere around like 2 teaspoons of food a day is usually sufficient. So if you've got 2 cockatiels together, then 4 teaspoons of food a day. And if you're feeding them that volume, the first thing they're going to do is they are going to eat those seeds because that's what they love. But then as the day goes on and they don't have those seeds, then they're going to have those pellets and they're going to have to start interacting with those. Now for cockatiels specifically, they're ground foragers. One thing that you can do is put like a plate on the bottom of their cage, sprinkle those seeds and then sprinkle the pellets in with it. And if you have those seeds and pellets mixed together and they're foraging around on the ground, then they will often accidentally pick up a pellet at some point along the process as they're pecking around through things. Yeah. And be likely to ingest it. And then as you start seeing them doing that, then you can start increasing your ratio of pellets and decreasing your seeds. With the ground foragers, the other thing that I have done with some of the small guys is I've actually gotten hay, like Timothy hay, that you would get for like a rabbit. And I've actually put that down on a plate on the bottom of the cage and then sprinkled your seeds and pellets and stuff in through that. And then they have to pick through it. And a lot of birds, that's what they would be doing in the wild, these ground foragers, right? They're picking through these grasses and things, trying to find stuff. And so you're harnessing that innate behavior that they have to get them to try something new. but feed only the volume they need per day in that.
There is a company, I don't know if they still make it, but have you seen, it looks like a astroturf for birds, and it's like a plasticky kind of green thing, and the food just drops in between, and then
Oh,
they forage through it, and then you can, rinse it off and reuse it, but it's just like a foraging grass strip.
okay. I haven't actually seen
Yeah.
that for birds before, but that's a great idea. I know they make those for pigs.
Oh.
Pet pigs, they like to forage around and root around in the ground, and they have a problem with getting overweight. And they'll make those little mats. So it's kind of the same thing, I guess, but for birds. So that's interesting. I haven't actually seen that before.
Yeah, I'll have to look that, if it's still around, maybe I'll try to put that out there somewhere. But yeah, I remember it was, I was thinking for cockatiels, it was just like perfect for them,
Yeah.
especially. So then Brianna asks, what are your thoughts on giving parrots spices like turmeric, cumin? So parrots and spices, do they mix?
Yeah, so I've used spices with parrots before. The big thing is to make sure you're not overdoing it, and that's where it can be kind of tricky. For example, turmeric. Turmeric's one of these things that's a little bit more popular in the last several years as an anti-inflammatory. And yes, it definitely has anti-inflammatory properties and can be helpful for sure. But too much turmeric actually can affect your liver. So you can overdo it. But small amounts of those sort of spices can be helpful. So I am not opposed to spices in birds, but we just want to make sure we're doing it at appropriate volumes. And the other reality is for birds, we don't always know necessarily because research hasn't been done on several things in birds. And knowing what that safe amount is, we don't always know exactly what that safe amount is. So it's something that if you do want to do that, it's good to talk with your veterinarian for your individual birds so that we know, the species, age, all that sort of stuff, and then can determine what is appropriate for this individual, how much could this individual get if we wanted to do it for whatever reason.
Okay. And then Anne had a comment going back to sprouting. She wanted to know, is there a good resource for purchasing and learning how to sprout? And she says that she's been afraid to try it due to the bacteria. And she says, when you tried it, Dr. Lamb, the sprouted millet, is that the same millet you can buy from a pet store? Like, would you go to the pet store, buy millet and then sprout it? Or is it a special kind of sprouting mix that you're using?
So, I don't typically get it from the pet store. I get it from human, grocery stores. Yeah, because Whole Foods is a place.
Or Sprouts.
Yeah, exactly. Sprouts. Because they sell, it's human grade. It's a little safer, I guess you could say, a little less likely to have any sort of contaminants or anything. Not that I know of any specific problems, but just the safety factor is there a little bit more assured with human grade products, sometimes in animal grade products. And it's also, there are certain seeds that won't germinate, so as far as good resources for you for sprouting, I do have some, I'm kind of forgetting the name for the moment, but I could provide those for you and you guys could put that up if you wanted with the webinar or email people. I'm just forgetting the specific name and I don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah. All right, let's see. I think we're getting close to our the end of our questions. Man, it just flew by so fast.
Yeah.
It's a very popular topic because we definitely have some questions that we didn't get through, but hopefully we'll be able to get through them and send you, if you send a question for us, an answer via email. Or we'll do like a picky eater diet part 2 because
yeah.
So just before we go on, I was going to announce, so we are doing a product giveaway, and that is the Lafeber tropical fruit pellets, as well as another bag of Lafeber food for your bird of your choosing. And today's winner is Grace F. Congratulations, your bird gets to try the new pellets. Hopefully they are take to them. I mean, that's a good one to try on a bird. And I know that when I used to try to get my bird to eat pellets, if I did the tug of war with them, like if I had it in my hand, I put a pellet up to the beak and pretend like I was going to take it back, that would make them reach out more and grab it.
Yeah. yeah, it sounds like it's teasing, and I guess it is a little bit, but you know, it's okay. It's stimulating them. It's engaging them. So hey, if that's what you've got to do to get them to try something new, go for it.
Yeah. And some birds are really social eaters, so you have to pretend like you're eating it with them, because they'll eat it if you're eating, and then as you thought, or not eating, but pretending to eat it. So many ways.
Exactly. Yeah.
So hopefully, Grace, that makes your weekend and your bird's weekend to try the product out. And let me see. I guess. Just I'm going to announce real quick. We what our webinar is for next Friday. We're going to be back on with Dr. Tom Tolley with Ask the Vet. So if you have a question, a vet question for your bird's health, hop on next Friday with us with Dr. Tolley. Let's see. Yeah, Dr. Lamb, that was we do. Oh, let me see here. Yeah, we got some. We had a lot of questions for you.
Okay.
But yeah, we also have a wealth of information on the Lafeber pet site on feeding and converting your bird to a pelleted diet. We have all those links up there. So let's see here. I think that is all we have time for today. It's already, the hour flew by so quickly. So, and I think Arroyo, he definitely look, he's like, thank you for the food.
Yeah.
Those are definitely some good tips and tricks, and hopefully people, let's hope you get excited, come up with a menu item for your bird to try in the week ahead, right? Yeah. So come up with the game plan. I think, do you recommend like game plans going into like?
Yeah, it can be really helpful, because maybe day 1 they're not going to try something, but keep at it. Day 2 they might try something, maybe then day 3 comes by and they're not so sure about it then again, but then day 4 comes and it's exciting again. So having a game plan is kind of nice, because then if you stick with a game plan, you have a lot more chance of success, I guess, in the long run.
Yeah, you can get one of those cute little chalkboards, they have at restaurants, and then write what the menu is going to be the week ahead, and then like get yourself excited about the menu so your bird can be excited. I think they feed off of your energy. So
exactly.
All right. Well, Dr. Lamb, thank you again for hopping on with us and another excellent presentation. So, and just to remind everybody that you can watch all of our webinars on the YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube, type in Lafeber, Lafeber Company, you'll see all of our webinars up there, and especially for all the wonderful slides of information that you have in your presentations, Dr. Lamb, people can go back and see those like caloric, values and stuff. So very good information. So on that note, everybody have a great weekend. Thank you for joining us. Dr. Lamb, thanks again. Hey. See you back soon. And in the meantime, everyone, all the best to you and your flock, and have a great and safe weekend. Bye.
Bye.